Good afternoon. My name is Chanan Bell, and welcome to the Tips on Submitting a Disability Retirement Package webcast. I am the program manager of Disability Branch 2 within OPM. Today we will be going over the disability application process and what's needed to process a disability case. At the end of the webcast, we will answer any questions that you may have during the webcast period. The purpose of this webcast is to advise federal agencies of the requirements for OPM to process a disability retirement application package. It also is to assist agencies with any questions about the specific requirements for OPM. Now, I'm just going to go over the slight application workflow that we have. The first step would be the applicant would submit the retirement application to their agency if still employed. If separated, the applicant will submit the application directly to OPM. Second, the agency submits the package to OPM through their payroll office, where the case is created, and a CSA number is produced. Third, the case is sent to OPM DC. At that time, we review the case file to determine whether or not the applicant meets the criteria for disability retirement. And last step is once a decision is made, the applicant and the agency will be notified of OPM's decision. Now, if the applicant is separated from the agency prior to applying for disability retirement, the applicant submits their application directly to OPM. The applicant can submit an application within 1 year of separating from the agency. We will reach out to the agency and or the National Personnel Records Center for the documents. The agency, if the applicant is separated, the agency is still they need to submit the 3112B, which is the supervisor statement, and also the 3112D, which is the accommodation efforts, even if the applicant has been separated. Going over the list of documents that the disability package consists of. But the first step would be the SF 3107, which is submitted for FERS, or the SF 2801, which is submitted for SERS, which is the application for immediate retirement. The next form would be the SF 3112A, which is the applicant's statement of disability. Then we have the SF 3112B, which is the supervisor statement. We also have the SF 3112C, which is the physician statement. We have the SF 3112D, which is the agency's certification of reassignment and accommodation efforts. We have the SF 3112E, which is the disability retirement application checklist. We have medical documentation, the position description, an SF50 or removal letter, and also the proof of Social Security application. Now we're going to go into a little depth with each document that is submitted. The immediate retirement application. The importance of the application is to verify that the applicant has filed for disability retirement within 1 year from the date of separation from the agency. We must ensure that the box 8 on either application is properly marked as a disability application. We also want to ensure that OWCP, which is the workers' compensation information, is complete. We also want to ensure that the application is dated and signed by the applying applicant. And again, this is just an example of the actual forms. So we want to make sure that all the form, once you receive them from the applicant, is completely filled out by the actual applicant. The next form is the SF3112A. The purpose of this form, it is where the applicant lists his or her alleged conditions and the date he or she believes he or she became disabled. Please ensure that this is filled out completely by the applicant. We will also need medical documentation back to that point that the individual is alleging that they became disabled. And again, this is just an example of the actual 3112A application or form. The next form in the disability package would be the SF3112B. The purpose: this form gives specific information regarding any service deficiencies that the applicant may have, and also gives a date of when those deficiencies occurred, which allows OPM to determine the date of disability for the applicant. Please ensure that this form is filled out completely by the applicant's supervisor. Please be very detailed in explaining the deficiencies that have been or that you have observed and how it affects the applicant's performance. Also, if there is a conduct issue, please describe that in detail, because we need to be able to determine if their medical condition caused the conduct deficiency. And on this form, you will also describe any accommodation efforts in reassignments. And again, this is just an example of the actual SF3112B form. The next form would be the SF3112C. The purpose of this document is to document what is required of the physician in terms of submitting information to OPM and provides consent to release medical documents to OPM. We also want to note that the actual medical documentation that is submitted by the applicant, that it is on a doctor's letterhead or a physician's letterhead, and is signed by an actual physician. And again, this is just an example of the SF3112C. The next form will be the SF3112D. The purpose of this form, it gives OPM an understanding of the agency's accommodation efforts and if the employee was able to be reassigned or not. On this form, we want to make sure that the agency is very detailed in the efforts of reassignment or accommodation. And this is an example of the form. This form is certified, being signed by the agency's coordinator for employment of the handicapped or other authorized agency official. Please fill out providing detailed efforts of accommodations or reassignment. If able to be reassigned, is it the same pay grade and tenure? We will also need to know that information. Now I'm going to the medical documentation, which is one of the most important parts of the disability application. OPM would like medical documentation dating back 3 years prior to the application date and any current records. Correspondence and records must be on a physician's letterhead. In addition to proving the disabling condition, medical documents must also provide evidence that the condition is expected to last at least a year from the date of the application. Now, some of the medical documentations it could consist of, but not limited to, doctor prognosis notes, clinical records, imaging reports with results, so MRIs. We don't want actual x-rays, but we would like to have the reports from the doctor, or the doctor reports from the x-rays, consultations, mental status examinations, and the results of psychological tests, symptoms, how the condition affects their ability to do their duties, and OPM must be able to have a nexus of the disabling condition to the service deficiency. Some of the things that we do not want to have, or that we don't need. We don't need a list of disabilities from the actual doctor. We don't need VA ratings with percentages of disability. And we would not like to have CDs or thumb drives, because most of the time we're unable to actually open them, and there are some PII issues involved with that as well. The next thing would be a position description, which is also an important part of the disability package. To be considered disabled under OPM rules, an individual must be found unable to render useful and efficient service in his or her position of record. Therefore, OPM needs the position description for the position of record. We have to basically understand the duties of that actual position, i.e. the physical or mental aspects of the actual position, so we can connect that with the disability that the individual is alleging, so we can connect that to make sure, or to see if they can actually still do their actual current position. The next step, which isn't always with the package because they aren't always removed from the agency's roles, but the next thing would be the SF-50 or removal letter. If the applicant has been removed or is no longer on the agency rolls, we must have a SF-50 or removal letter that shows the reason for the separation. The reason for this, we need to know if it's due to their medical issue that they've been removed or improper conduct. We have to basically connect, have a nexus between the service deficiency and the medical condition. So we would need to know why the individual was removed. The next form that we would need is proof of Social Security application. One of OPM's requirements to be eligible for disability retirement is the proof that the applicant has filed for Social Security disability benefits. Proof could be, and is not limited to, the award notice or denial notice from SSA. Also, proof that an online application has been submitted. And the reason why we need these actual forms or proof is because an individual, if they are approved for benefits and OPM is not aware that they're also receiving Social Security benefits, they could actually incur an overpayment with us. So it will have that impact on that customer. Now, the last form in the package would be the SF3112E. And the purpose for this form, it serves as a checklist for the agency to verify that all required documents have been submitted and that the applicant administratively is eligible for disability retirement benefits. We use this form, of course, to communicate with the agency as well. The address listed on this form is where we send all communication via mail to the agency. We want to ensure that the individual has at least 5 years of service for CSRS and also or 18 months of service for FERS. This form also allows us or advises the OPM that if the agent or if the applicant is in current pay or not. So once this form is actually complete and everything is checked yes that you have that form inside of the disability retirement package, then your disability retirement package should be complete. And just to go over a little contact information here, the disability branch chief would be Ms. Eva Ucola. The disability section 1 manager is Ms. Gloria Silva. Her customer service line is 202-606-0270, where you can also have your staff contact us with any status inquiries at that number. Myself, I am the Disability Section 2 manager, of course, and my customer service line is 202-606-0290. Thank you, and that concludes the form portion of our webcast. Now we're going to actually have some questions and answers. But before that, we're going to take a short pause, and we'll be right back. Thank you for waiting. And we're back with, joining me now is Eva Ucola, the Disability Branch Chief, and we will field the questions and answer portion of the webcast.
Okay, first question we have, how can we obtain the decision letter when the agency notice is not received?
When the agency notice is not received, if they call us, we can send them a copy, or we can fax it to them. I mean, they have to let us know that it wasn't received. I'm assuming that the applicant got their letter and that they told the agency. We do not send the agency letters once the person's been separated more than a year.
And again, if you contact the customer service line that is in the slide, they should be able to retrieve that letter for you as well.
Okay, second question, and this sounds like somebody who's been in contact with you guys before. Are the disability branch contacts section 1 and 2 still based on the concept of CSA last digit 0 to 4 and 5 to 9 going to a particular branch?
Currently it is, but we are in the process of realigning our files.
Okay. Is there any kind of triage system? If submissions included a cover page summary of the diagnosis, leave usage, and impact, would that help facilitate processing more severe cases more rapidly? And when is it appropriate to inquire about the status? If a package was submitted early December, should we be hearing something by now?
Okay, if it's a specific medical condition that is possibly terminal, we do have a special process for that. The agency sends us a copy of the package so that we can make sure we have everything we need prior to them sending it through Boyers, but we cannot issue the determination until the CSA number has been created by Boyers.
Okay, how does a current OWCP case affect the filing for a disability retirement under FERS? If the disability retirement is approved but suspended due to OWCP, what does that mean for the former employee?
That they would have the option, if we've approved it, they have the option of coming back on from OWCP to OPM's roles. But they have to apply, and within the 1 year and be approved prior to separation. So if they have an application package in, we approve it, they choose OWCP over us, they do have the option of coming back on our rolls.
Is the 3112C required if the doctor does not submit it with the retirement records?
Yes, we like to have it because it is a release for us to get information.
Okay.
When an employee has separated from the agency, what are the responsibilities of the servicing HR office to complete and provide documentation for the disability retirement? Some specialists are confused over the OPM guidelines to the former employee. Therefore, you should submit your application directly to OPM rather than to your agency, versus ask your former supervisor and employee agency to complete SF 3112B, SF 3112D, and SF 3112E, and give them to you so you can send them to OPM. Most of the confusion is with how to complete the SF 3112E checklist if the complete application and documents are not submitted to the agency. Is the former employee required to submit the other documents, SF 2801, SF 3107, SF 3112A, SF 3112B, SF 3112C, to the agency so the agency can complete the SF 3112E?
Okay, the agency, The application package tells the employee that if they've been separated for more than 31 days, to apply directly to OPM. And it does tell them to go to their agency and give the information so that we can get the supervisor's information and the accommodation reassignment efforts. We don't necessarily need the 3112E. It's the checklist, and if it's not coming directly through the agency's not going to know that what we have and what we don't from the employee. But if they want us to notify them, that's where we get the address to notify the agency of the decision. And since we still generally send the agency a letter if the person applies within a year of their separation, we will still notify the agency. So the primary purpose for that would be for us to have that address so we can contact the agency, and it gives us an agency contact.
Do medical documents need to be signed by doctor, as most medical facilities do electronic records?
We want it on a letterhead, and, I mean, if it shows it's signed electronically, it's okay.
What is the current timeline for approval of disability retirement? I currently have had cases that are pending since August and September, and per OPM have not been assigned. Is there someone I should contact?
Sure. Well, currently, we are aware that we do have a backlog currently. It is, we do have things in place to try to get that backlog down. Just some of the causes of our backlog, that we lost a lot of specialists during the last year. We only had one manager in 2 branches for the disability branch. We also only had one customer service specialist for each branch, and that was for over a year. So that contributed to our backlog. We are in the process, again, like Eva stated, that we are revamping and realigning our files, where we will be able to process, of course, the oldest cases first in that priority. So we previously had 22 specialists to handle all of the agencies in the federal government for disability cases. And now currently we only have 11 specialists and 2 trainees. And we have 9 customer service specialists currently. So just to put that in perspective, we have a workload of approximately 15,000 cases per year, and only 11 specialists to process those 15,000 cases. So that's a little over 1,000 cases each specialist a year. Because of this webcast, of course, we hope that we have provided with helpful information that will assist you in providing a complete package, and therefore, of course, result in improving your processing times.
Are medical conditions prior to federal employment acceptable documents for the packet?
Okay, if somebody has a pre-existing condition, that they had the condition when they were hired, one of the criteria for disability is that you have to become disabled while serving under the retirement system. So they would have to show that that medical condition has significantly worsened while they were employed.
If an employee has already received a determination from Social Security Administration, does this reduce the turnaround time for a OPM determination?
Not necessarily. Social Security has different criteria than we do.
Okay, give me just a second here. Okay, so okay. We have an employee who will be applying, but they continue to work trying to maintain their benefits, et cetera, as they're not eligible for immediate retirement, and so would like to wait until the application has been approved or denied. if the employee is going to apply, what sort of timeline does OPM have right now with processing of a disability application?
Okay, like I said, again, it depends on the medical condition. When the cases come in, they are screened. We screen out the terminal cases, and we also screen out what we consider quick hits. We call them critical cases, and they are things such as strokes, heart attacks, Alzheimer's, ALS, things like that, where the decision's pretty much a quick hit for us to move the case. So it depends on what the person's medical condition is, on how fast we can probably get to it.
Okay, and another question is, OPM required to inform agencies that the disability applicant was denied and requested for appeal/reconsideration? And what is the time frame that OPM informs the agency of the employee's appeal process or if the decision was overturned?
Okay, we send out, as long as, like I said, as long as the person is still on the agency rolls, the agency gets a letter the same time the applicant gets a letter. So if the person's denied, the agency gets the letters are sent out the same day. So the agency would be notified the same day as the applicant if the case was denied. We don't notify the agency if somebody requests reconsideration. They can call in and we would tell them. But we don't send out a letter notifying the agency that the person's requested reconsideration.
Okay, and this is a recurring question in the emails. Is there a main number we agencies can contact OPM to check on the status of disability applications?
Okay, Shannon gave out the numbers earlier for the customer service lines. 202-606-0270 or 202-606-0290.
Okay, here's an interesting one. We have contacted OPM on several occasions to request a status on disability applications that we assisted employees with completing. Recently, when we called, we were told that OPM could not release information about the status of the claim to the agency without the employee's permission. Is this the case? Do you need the employee's permission in order to provide the agency with status on the application? If so, should we include a written authorization with the application from the employee that authorizes OPM to release information about the status of the claim to us?
We don't have an issue with giving status updates to agencies.
Seems right.
Okay, let's see here. Recently, DFAS said the SF 3107 Schedule A, B, and C was required as part of the retirement application. This form was not discussed in today's presentation. Is it now required?
That's not part of what we deal primarily with the medical end of the processing. We don't deal with the financial
Right.
end of processing or the finalization of the case where they would need that information.
Okay. Give me just a second. Let's try and find you some more interesting questions. Do CSRS employees have to submit SSA proof of application letter since they don't earn Social Security credit?
No,
No, no.
unless they're an offset employee.
Okay. Here's a slightly different take on the time frame thing. What is the time frame that it takes the disability retirement package to move from OPM Boyers to OPM DC? And yeah.
Okay, that generally depends on I think if it comes in as a paper copy or an electronic feed until they get all the records. Because once the application package gets up there, they have to pull payroll cards if there's any up there for former agencies or where anybody's worked from before. So they have to gather all that information before they send it down to us.
Yeah, and we had a couple questions about the release thing, so I think somebody's been telling, probably when they're calling the call center, I suspect that that's the information that they're getting,
okay.
is that they're probably telling them that they need some kind of a release for the
Speak to the individual.
information.
Okay.
So,
If- If you're running into those issues again with the 800 number, if that is the source of it, like I said, feel free to call the 202-606-0270 or the 202-606-0290 numbers, and our customer service specialist will be happy to give you a status of the case.
Please describe the process once the application is submitted to OPM.
Okay, once the application
Take that,
is
okay.
submitted, well, it would go to Boyers. Boyers would create the CSA number. They would forward the case down to us. Once it comes down to us, our customer service specialists, they go through the case, make sure that we have all the required forms. If not, they will send out a development letter, and we hold the case for 30 days. If we don't get it in the 30 days, we will assign it and get it to, give them another 30 days to send it in. If everything is there, they assign it to a file so that we know the case is ready to be assigned. We pull cases from that file and give it to the LAS, the legal administrative specialist who makes the decision. And once they make the decision, if it's an approval, it goes to our disability approved prep team who develops for final records and then forwards it on to our claims department who finalizes the case. If it's denied, we send the case back to Boyers until we get our reconsideration request, and that would be the end of it there.
If a second opinion physician has concluded that an employee can no longer perform their position of record and their injury is under OWCP, can an employee still apply for disability retirement while the agency offers them a different position to keep them off the OWCP long-term roles? If not, sure, if this would interfere with the agency portion of the disability retirement paperwork that discusses accommodation, would they be considered two different things?
Okay, I mean, there's nothing stopping somebody from applying for disability. But they can't have both disability and OWCP at the same time.
okay, let's see here. We've got a bunch of other. Let's see.
What is the effective date after we receive approval letter? What is the rule if an employee is still working when the approval letter is received? Do we tell the employee to leave the day we get the approval letter, or do they get to work out the rest of the pay period?
Well, most of the time, that's when it goes to our approval prep team, where they will go out to the agency for the last day of pay. Most of the time, if an individual or employee has been working throughout their disability or injury, if they get their approval, they're ready to leave already. But we just need to know whatever the last day of pay is, because when it goes to our claims department, that's what they will put in when the individual is eligible to start receiving their actual disability retirement the day after that. So that's completely up to the agency or in the applicant on when they would stop working at that time, once they're approved.
Yeah, and generally speaking, in Chapter 60 of the SERS and FERS Handbook, there's a general statement in there that says that normally employees are separated no later than the last day in the pay period in which the approval notice is received. So I'm not sure with the question, yeah, if they were talking about annuity commencing dates,
Right,
which
right.
obviously goes back
To the left, right?
to
last day, when-
whatever,
when
yeah.
disability, right.
If OWCP is involved, probably you guys will have a different answer.
It's just So, depending on the scenario, basically, yes.
Let's see. Okay, this is a question we already had, asking about proof of Social Security if the person never paid into Social Security. Would you consider an alternate? Okay.
Would you please consider an alternative when sending agency notifications of approval and disapproval of disability applications? The U.S. mail process at our agency includes several mail stops for sorting and an X-ray before it finally arrives at the correct office. This process delays our receipt of the notification by 7 to 10 days. Since OPM's notice does not include PII, could you please email the HR specialist identified on the agency certification? Yeah.
No, it doesn't. We can consider doing that, but right now, I mean, based on staffing levels, I mean, we'll look into that. But not all the agencies give us information to email or fax something to them.
Okay, let's see if we've got any other questions that are. This really isn't you guys, this is more mailroom. Why doesn't OPM sign FedEx proof of delivery? One of our disability packages was sent to OPM and received by FedEx, but OPM can't find the package and there's no way of tracking who received it and where it is. What do other agencies do besides FedEx? I'm thinking that's more mailroom.
That's probably more mailroom, but I mean, the FedEx, they come up to our office and I sign for them all the time, so I'm not sure what didn't get signed for. I mean, I know they come up and have us sign for things.
The agency checklist requires performance appraisals. How many years of performance appraisals? The presentation has a list of required documents and performance appraisals were not on the list.
The last performance appraisal, I mean, so it can, if there's a service deficiency, we want to see, you know, what duties they weren't doing, things like that. So it would be their most recent performance appraisal.
What is the process to obtain an expedited determination? Example, due to financial hardship. I was previously advised to send in a fax request, but then no response was ever provided to make acknowledgement of the request or that the request would be accepted. Also, what is the standard for OPM to response to HR inquiries when voicemail messages are left with the disability branch? In the past, my voicemails were never acknowledged by OPM.
Just to interject, one of the concerns that we had, again, with any inquiries that were coming directly to our customer service line here in Washington, D.C., is that we only had 2 customer service specialists on each branch, and the call volume that we were having for status requests at that time was a little overwhelming for the 2 specialists to return every phone call or to answer every status request that they received. Now that we are pretty much fully staffed with 9 customer service specialists, they should, that turnaround time to respond to those requests should increase greatly.
For the financial hardship part of that question, every case that's a disability application is really a financial hardship case, so it's hard for us to put one over the other. With the disability cases, nobody planned on having to retire early, nobody's prepared. So in cases like that, we look like if somebody's house is in foreclosure, things like that. But otherwise, we consider any disability case a hardship case because nobody planned on being sick, nobody planned on having to go out early, so they don't have the funds set aside like if you had planned for a normal retirement.
What do you suggest when a supervisor claims the information the applicant included on the SF 3112A is false and they are concerned about signing the SF 3112B because of the inaccurate information?
Okay, the supervisor's not responsible for the 3112A. I mean, they're documenting their information on the 3112B, that's their statement. So they can tell us whatever they want on their statement. I mean, we look at what the applicant's claim is on the 3112A. It's not necessarily going to coordinate with the supervisor's statement.
Let's see. Let's do that.
If a person applies for FERS disability at age 61 and is approved for Social Security disability at age 61, but turns age 62 prior to OPM rendering a decision, how is the application handled at that point?
The application would still be processed the same.
We still make a medical determination on the application. I'm guessing that question is more geared towards a claims,
The annuity
the
calculation.
annuity calculation portion, which the disability office doesn't do, unfortunately.
Okay, already gotten, I think.
Will OPM be providing agencies with a checklist for disability retirement applications? What will OPM do when many medical facilities go to providing medical documentation electronically? Is this referring to OPM not wanting CDs or flash drives?
Okay, at this point, I mean, we're generally sending them back because we can't open them, and there's PII issues with thumb drives and things. So at this point, we don't accept them.
And a lot of times, as they're being transported to us, if it is a CD, sometimes they become cracked in the mail and things like that.
What is the document/form order for the disability retirement package?
I'm not sure what that's referring to. I mean, the package is already labeled A, B, C, D, E,
Yeah.
and the PD, and any removal notice. I mean, that's,
And any medical documentation, of course.
Yeah, I guess they're wondering if you want to put it, if you want to have it received in any particular order, or just, you know, if the medical documentation can be first, or the application.
I mean, generally, it goes through the criteria, so it's the applicant statement, supervisor statement, physician statement with medical, the agency accommodation reassignment efforts, the agency checklist, and the position description.
Just a second. Okay, that's not a question. It's not, we've already talked about that. Talked about that. sorry, give us just a second here. We're going through, and a lot of the questions are very similar, so we're, yeah, it's the second thing. Does that make sense to you? Okay.
Yes. Can a copy instead of the original SF3112B and SF3112D be submitted with the disability application?
Yes.
After we submit an application, how do we know which contact line to call since we are not notified of the CSA number when Boyer sends the case to Washington?
Either customer service contact line can be contacted. They will be able to answer any status inquiry, either no matter what branch the actual case is on.
We talked about that. Okay. And they're asking, again, for, oops, if there's a case order. Sorry, give me just a second here. Let's,
I mean, I would just put it in the order of the forms. It may not necessarily stay that way because after the HR office sends it to their payroll office and it goes to Boyer's, I mean, things may be rearranged anyway, but if, I mean,
But the main focus or importance is that all the forms are there, so the actual order that it comes into our office really isn't that big of a concern.
this is more a pay and leave question. I'm not sure if you guys want to try and tackle it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, an employee approved for advanced sick leave prior to when a disability package is submitted to OPM. The employee has continued to work but uses FMLA and advanced sick leave intermittently. Subsequently, the employee's full disability package was submitted to OPM. At what point is the employee no longer able to use the advanced sick leave? What determines the exact date the employee becomes ineligible to use advanced sick leave? Yeah, we can send
I
that pay and
wouldn't
leave.
know
I
that.
just thought, I
Unfortunately, I
thought
wouldn't know
I'd
that
ask you
answer,
guys
right.
and see. Let's see.
If an employee is eligible for a voluntary retirement, are there any advantages to filing for disability retirement?
The main advantage, I'm guessing, for if an individual does file for an immediate retirement is that, of course, a medical determination does not have to be made. So we do have the option of, if they are eligible for an immediate retirement, they can go out on immediate retirement and also file for a disability retirement as well. And they can process their immediate retirement application while awaiting their decision on their medical determination.
You mentioned stroke, heart attacks as quick hits with regards to moving the application forward. if they had a heart attack and work and are working now, but their presence at work increases chances of another heart attack, and so are on leave for a lot of the time, what sort of reasoning would be acceptable for approval of a disability retirement? Example, employee had a heart attack, was out, is now back, but is at higher risk due to stress, etc. of work.
I mean, we look at the doctor's prognosis. I mean, if the doctor says he can go back to work, I mean, that's what we're looking at. And whether or not he has any service deficiencies. Did it stop him from doing any of his essential duties?
Let's skip that. Says attachment, not sure how to use it. Okay, again, we're getting a lot of repeats here, so bear with me while we go through these. Okay, kind of already answered that.
What is the process for transferring, activating FEHB coverage with OPM for newly approved applicants?
Okay, once we get the case approved, it goes to our disability prep team and they wait for the agency to send us the information. We can't do it until the agency gives us the HB information and final records.
Yeah.
Okay.
Applicant alleges that stress caused by the work environment exacerbates medical condition beyond what medication can control. Historically, how has OPM decided on disability retirement applications for stress at work?
Stress itself isn't a basis for disability retirement. I mean, it depends on how it affects whatever other medical conditions they have.
Can the employee call the telephone numbers given today to check the status of their case?
Yes.
Yes.
Or is there another telephone number they should call?
No, that's our customer service line. They're
They can-
welcome to call that number.
Or they also can call the 800 number.
Okay, that's not.
Once all the specialists are finally hired, what is the OPM goal for approval timeline from receipt of package? We were told that you were understaffed and the why it is taking so long, but we haven't been told the actual timeline goal and expectation.
We would like to get it down to about 90 days.
I have an employee who has completed a disability retirement packet. However, the agency is dragging its feet to fill out the reasonable accommodation form. Can we forward the package without this form?
You can forward it, but we're going to request the form because that they have to show the agency's inability to accommodate them or reassign them to another position.
What are the fax numbers for critical and terminal cases?
202-606-4895 and 1957. 202-606-1957.
If the agency is not able to offer a reasonable accommodation to the applicant, will OPM automatically disapprove the application?
No. I mean, the applicant has to show the agency's inability to accommodate them.
Okay. We're getting there.
Is there any special documentation you want sent with a disability package if someone's family member is completing the application for the employee who is not able to do so?
I mean, on a case like that, I mean, we would go ahead and process it because a family member, an attorney, somebody can apply for them. But once it's processed, before they can do everything, they would end up getting a representative payee. So they would have to fill out the representative payee paperwork.
Where do we send additional medical support documents, and when should we stop accepting medical?
I mean, just go ahead and send it to the OPM address, OPM 1900 E Street, room 3349, Washington, D.C., 20415, and put it attention to the disability branch. And I would continue, as long as the person's case hasn't been processed yet, the more information we have and the more current it is, the better for us.
The accommodations efforts form, is this form ever going to be revised because sometimes the employee does not apply for reasonable accommodations?
I don't know that we're going to revise it anytime soon, but I mean, there's various options to check.
Can you elaborate more on if an employee is eligible for regular retirement and submits the regular retirement application and then has a disability retirement application into OPM? How is this reviewed, etc.? And what decisions are made based on regular retirement versus disability retirement? For example, employee is 62 and is under FERS.
In a case like that, the only thing that's different, since they're 62, I mean, they're going to get unless they have over 20 years of service, I believe they're going to get the earned annuity. But because they are eligible for a regular retirement, that gets processed quicker because it is an earned annuity. A disability retirement is not necessarily something, everybody's going to be able to prove. So filing that one, they're going to get that one processed first, and then they would forward it down to us.
Yeah, also one thing to elaborate on that, if they're under 62, there's going to be potentially a financial implication with applying for disability, because under disability, an employee is not, or somebody who's approved for disability retirement, again, if they're eligible for both, like you said, they're only going to get the earned rate, correct? So with a disability retirement, they don't get the FERS annuity supplement. So they would actually potentially be losing money if they're under age 62 and apply for disability retirement. So that would be a consideration as well. Okay.
If the pre-existing condition is a documented mental illness and it has worsened significantly, is that an acceptable condition with performance issues?
Yeah, as long as they show that it has significantly worsened and that they were at some point able to perform all their duties and now that they're not, and that they can show the nexus between the medical condition and the service deficiency.
What is the 800 phone number you keep referring to?
And I apologize, I don't have the actual 800 number.
Is that the
listed.
call center?
Right, the call center.
888-767-6738.
Thank you.
What about a person who only has 6 months to live? Definitely a clear hardship.
In a
That-
situation like that, the agency should send it in under the terminal process.
If the agency is able to accommodate the employee but not at the same GS level, should we note this, especially when the employee will not lose any pay through HPR?
Not sure what HPR is.
I'm not
I'm
sure what
not
that
sure
is.
either. It might be like save pay or something.
I mean, accommodation has to be the same pay, same grade, same commuting area. Or it's actually a reassignment.
All right, at that time, it would
Yeah, it
be a
would be a
reassignment.
reassignment.
Okay. That's the same. Do you want to- Or should-
We already answered.
Okay.
What is the form number for representative payee? Can agency provide the form to someone who represents the applicant?
Okay, I don't know the form number right off. But I mean, it doesn't stop them from, I mean, they can sign the application and we can do it. It's once the application's approved, they're gonna need a rep payee if the person's not able to sign the application themselves.
Come on, open it.
If an employee is disapproved for disability retirement and has asked for reconsideration, where should we, the agency, send additional medical documentation?
To the same address I gave earlier, OPM, 1900 E Street, Northwest, room 3349, attention Disability Branch, Washington DC 20415, or they can fax it into us at 202-606-1957 or 4895.
We were given the fax number of 202-606-1686 for expedited cases due to a terminal diagnosis, limited life expectancy. Does this fax number still work? The two numbers given earlier in the Q&A were completely different.
What were those numbers again? The
No.
first number that she just, that they just
No,
said?
we still have that number.
202-606-1686.
We
Yeah.
still have that.
Yeah, we still
fax
have, we have
number as
multiple
well.
faxes in the
Right.
office.
If an employee goes out on disability retirement and is not eligible for voluntary retirement, when the employee is at the eligible age for regular retirement, does the employee get transferred over to regular retirement from disability retirement?
No, I mean, the annuity is recalculated at age 62.
Please clarify. My understanding is when an employee submits a completed disability retirement packet, on that day, the employee can no longer report to work until a decision is made. Is that incorrect?
They can continue working once they fill out their paperwork.
Is information from a physician assistant acceptable, or must it come from a MD?
We generally like the MD to co-sign it.
We talked about that multiple times. Yeah. His previous rate, okay. Somebody came back to us and said HPR is highest previous rate. So. um, I think we're coming to the end here. We're getting a lot of repeats, so bear with us for just a second. Do they want to take that? I mean, it's not really a decision.
Can we still email expedited cases to ldop@opm.gov?
Yes.
If an employee loses FEHB coverage because of more than 365 days of LWOP while awaiting a disability retirement decision, what does the employee need to do to ensure that FEHB is reinstated if the disability retirement is approved? The FEHB handbook seems to indicate that they must convert to an individual policy from their carrier in order to be able to have FEHB reinstated upon disability retirement approval. Is that correct?
From a claims side, I don't believe that is correct. They if they are approved for the disability for their health benefits, even if they haven't been or if they've been out on leave without pay, once the benefit is calculated, the claims office will give them the option to reinstate their health benefits back to when it was when they went out on last day of pay.
Okay, I think we're coming to the end here, guys. I'm
Okay.
finding.
How long does it take for retirees to receive their first interim payment after the HR office calls the disability service line with the last day of pay?
We generally get them in interim pay within 10 days of getting the last day of pay.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that weren't repeats so far. So,
Thank you again for attending the webcast that we have here. And again, the disability office will or is in the process of working to complete all aged, of course, our backlog cases as quickly as possible. And we are definitely here to answer any inquiries that you have for the status of your case of the cases with the agencies. Again, you can contact our 800 number, which was given during the question and answer period, or you can again contact one of our customer service lines here in DC at 202-606-0270 and also 202-606-0290. And if anything needs to be, of course, faxed with additional medical documentation, feel free to fax it to either one of the fax numbers that we did provide. And get those fax numbers
The
together.
202-606-1957, 202-606-4895.
Thank you. I think
Thank
that's
you.
all we have. You guys have